The next conversation is concerning a statement put out by the Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria, who says that given the state of the economy and 40% or thereabout increase in the cost of doing business, they are also proposing a 40% increase in the services that they render to Nigerians. To be or not to be? Let's have a conversation this morning with Chief Adeolu Ogunbanjo, who is National President, National Association of Telecom Subscribers, NATCOMS. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure having me.
And we also have Mr. Benga Debayo, who is Chairman, Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria. He joins us virtually from Ikoyi. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mr. Debayo.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning. Perhaps a little background. The last time interestingly, it was both of you gentlemen that were here to have this conversation with us. And it sounded like it was even unthinkable to consider any kind of increase in the services of telecom in Nigeria. And now this. Any background, any update that people, your subscribers, may need to know about?
Thank you. We are confronted with different economic realities from what we were facing the last time we were on television. And the fact remains today that if you look at the economic indices, the current pricing regime is not sustainable. And what we have done is to approach our regulator to present a case to them to see this is where we are as an industry. And we did make some recommendation on what should be done in order to forestall the price review. But certainly considering the current global energy crisis, considering the challenges that we face in our operating environment, if we are not getting any regulatory intervention, it will be a bit difficult to sustain the industry with the current pricing regime that we have.
But I hope this consideration of yours also factors in the fact that your subscribers also operate in the same market, also confronted with the same issues that you're confronted with. So if they have low buying power, it's going to come right back at you.
Absolutely so. And for that reason, we have sought for regulatory intervention instead of a direct price increase. And what we have done is to present a case to our regulator to say this is where we are. We made some recommendations. We have only said failing which we'll have no choice than to consider approaching them again for reviewing prices. I must also say that we're a highly regulated industry. We're unable to change the tariffs without recourse to the regulator. We're not able to change any prices without asking for regulatory approval. And so the process of doing so, we need to start by letting the regulator know what are the problems that we face, present them with statistics and data to see where the economy is and where the industry is. And in order to have a sustainable industry, we're saying again that what we charge now may not be sustainable. The other thing is also government itself is introducing some new taxes on operators. I don't know if you are aware that effective from 1st of June, there will now be a 5% excise tax on telecom services. This will have to be borne by someone. So if we are saying on one side we shouldn't review prices, and on another side government compromises our ability to sustain the current pricing regime, it's an irony actually, and that's something that government itself has a duty to look into.
Well, that sounds to me like anticipatory costing, but we'll come to that. But, you know, one of the information that the NCC has put out is that there will be no price increase without some study done to the effect. If that study has been done, I'm wondering why maybe your subscribers also couldn't come on your side and say, oh, okay, they're right. Maybe, is this something that can be made public? If it has been sent to the NCC.
We presented data to the regulator, and numbers don't lie. The figures are there, the numbers are there. Other than the general information that we all have about the trend of the global economy, we have industry statistics. Even the National Bureau of Statistics itself has released information about the trend of inflation in the country since beginning of the year till now. So the data will be there to speak for itself. We just expect that fairness will prevail, and all those who are responsible will have a critical look at what we face so that we can have a sustainable industry. Because we must warn that there's no industry that is immune against failure. For us to avoid any catastrophic situation in our sector, we are saying, let's look at the reality of our pricing. Let's look at the challenges that we face. Let government itself do something in order to mitigate against having this kind of explosion.
Okay. Mr. Chief Ngbanjo, are you aware of this statistics, this research done to validate the reason for an increase?
Unfortunately, a lot of subscribers are not aware at all. And it's rather unfortunate that, again, you can imagine Engineer Adebayo telling us, ALTON, that another excise duty, 5%, is going to be charged again. Government is not even helping matters for now. So many taxes. In fact, about 20, 25 different taxes, including state governments and all that. They really should come in to ensure that telecoms is affordable to the average Nigerian. That is the last hope. That is what we depend on for our businesses, for very many things, virtual meetings and stuff like that. So I would say that it's unfortunate that we are not aware of all this study. We are not. We're not.
Well, the economy, is in dire straits, having many sectors having come from, the bent back of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we only just exited the aviation sector. But let's look at it a bit from a more realistic perspective, Mr. Ngbanjo. During COVID,
Yes.
the telecom sector cashed out. And here's the figure. GSM operators generated revenue increased by 12.3% from 2.02 trillion naira recorded the previous year to 2.27 trillion naira. Internet service providers generated 68.96 billion naira in revenue, up from 28.31%, while others generated 437.49 billion naira, up from generated 534, compared with 437 in 2019. If we're going to be honest with ourselves, shouldn't the telecom sector be offering bailouts to other sectors? What's the justification for an increase in tariff?
Quite honestly, during COVID, a lot of us took to virtual everything, from calls to virtual meetings to virtual everything, electronic this, electronic that. But beyond that now, post-COVID, well, I don't know what to say now, whether it is post-COVID, but after these serious COVID times.
Post-lockdown is okay.
Well, post-lockdown, yes. Government now came up with this SIM registration thing, which was December 2020. And that, again, has affected some revenue, particularly now that a lot of subscribers are shut out. They can't do ongoing calls from their phones. And that is affecting subscribers' business. As ALTON is crying out that, sorry, they have challenges and all that with government and whatever taxes. Here we are as well. They have also, well, though it's a government directive, they have also now shut down some of the businesses of subscribers by not being able to make calls. I can't make calls to my business associates. So here we are, a lot of us, close to about 70 million now, maybe there are new figures, that are still not being linked. And government is also not considering extension for now. So I quite sympathize with the operators. This is some huge loss of revenue for them. But that was not now, that shouldn't translate to increasing price. No. It shouldn't.
Are you saying that the telecoms operators, despite that huge profit made in 2020, have begun to struggle? Is it as a result of poor management of the huge turnover that you recorded in 2020?
I must say, maybe ALTON is now strategically looking at, post-June, maybe second quarter or so, third quarter forecasts. For now, they shouldn't be thinking of that at all. Let us settle subscribers. Let us understand that subscribers also need to be in business. Let us appeal to government to ensure that they unbar or unban subscribers. But then revenue will come.
Subscribers also need to do, what government is asking for. It's a simple thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But, there are so many challenges also with NIMC website, NIMC portals, to upload some of these data that is being collected nationwide.
So you think that the barring of the lines of some people has affected the prices?
The revenue, yes, okay. The revenue lost to the operators.
Okay. Well, Engineer Adebayo, I mean, you've heard some of the issues raised by my colleague now, and I'm sure you're inching to respond to some of the issues that she's raised in those figures.
Yes, those numbers sound very nice and they look positive, but the reality differs from that. We are an industry with many players. For example, we have the tier 2, tier 3 operators that are not feasible in some of those dynamics that have been read out. The reason is that we can't take the performance of the few major operators as the state of health of the industry. I must also say that in the intervening period, when these reports are being collated, the report that your colleague read, we had many operators who either couldn't pay staff salaries or couldn't fulfill their obligation as maybe due because of the challenges they had in income. So we must look at the health of the industry holistically, and let's be careful not to take the performance of some of the participants as the overall performance of the entire industry. That's number one. Number two is that if you look at those numbers, what is the cost of providing the service? There's a cost element. You've looked at the outcome, you look at the funding results. What is the baseline cost of delivering on those services? Those also cost significantly high. And our position is that the state of health of the industry provides no guarantee about the industry's sustainability. And that's why we are saying, let's work with numbers, let's work with data, let's work with statistics. Let's work with the reality of our operating environment. Whether we like it or not, the behavior of government in itself is not helping things for anyone. Other than the issue of sliding in the value of the currency, you have the issue of a high cost of energy supply. We have security problems across the country. We have public actors closing telecom sites for reasons of collecting revenues. Chief Ogumajo did mention 28 taxes and levies. I must correct that. We stand today at about 36 of those, 36 various taxes and levies against operators. An additional 5% excise tax is now being considered effective from 1st of June and so on. All of these affect the bottom line of the sector. And that's why we went to the regulator to say, this is the problem that we have. This is where we are as an industry. And we made some prayers to say, prayers 1 to 9. These are the things that we think the regulator should do to mitigate against the current challenges that we have in order to prevent an increase in subscriber cost. So, in essence, the first thing first is for regulator to look at the challenges that we have put before them. Government to intervene in areas that they can intervene, and I must say not by way of bailout, it's also just a regulatory instrument, to utilize the necessary regulatory instrument to get what we need to get, to make this better for all, and then life can be better for everyone. But I must warn that the state of health of the industry as it stands today raises some concern. And let's continue to remind ourselves that there is no sector that is immune against failure. If government action doesn't support the industry, it's only a matter of time.
Now, in government's confirmation of your memo requesting for an increase, it mentioned proposed increase or request for increase for voice call and short messaging service. Confirm if it also covers data services. And right after doing that, I also want you to speak to the impact on subscribers, particularly those at the lowest rung of the social ladder who want to make that quick call, and they rely on this current regime that is, within their purchasing power. Surely that is going to affect them hugely.
Yeah, first is that the numbers provided to government suggest that with the current level of rates that we have in terms of operating costs, sustainability of the industry will remain a challenge. That's number one. Number two, we are concerned about the effect on subscribers. And for that reason, we have not gone to say tomorrow we are going to increase prices. We have only said this is the state of affairs of the industry. What can you do? This and this and this are what we propose as an industry for the government to look into. Now, we have mobile operators, and then we have the infrastructure providers who are faced mainly with this problem of diesel supply, logistics across the country and all that. If that sector, that part of the industry doesn't survive, it will affect the performance of the major mobile operators. And so we're looking at the industry holistically, not just looking at one side, whether voice only, data only, and so on. But we're looking at the entire sector, those who provide support services, those who do back-end services, for instance, on the front end. And all of these are things that we present to our regulator to look at with a view to see what our regulatory mechanism can be implemented to allow for some relief. This is what we're asking for. We are not unmindful about the impact of this on subscribers. And to be honest, on the other side, I'm also affected because I'm a subscriber. But the fact remains that if it's not sustainable, it's not sustainable.
When you say you're a subscriber, someone is wondering, really? But a number of other issues.
There must be some privileges for your class of subscriber.
We'll come to those other issues. And when we return from this break, please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Well, Chief, you've listened to Engineer Adebayo, and first of all, are you persuaded that the issues are as pressing as it says they are, and consequently, this cost review is inevitable?
The issues have been there all along, I must say. For instance, about 2-3 years back, they wanted to introduce another tax, which, of course, I don't know whether, it was jettisoned or it was withdrawn eventually. If government wants to make any revenue, the first thing they want to look at is, after oil, the next thing is telecoms. It's unfortunate. Government begins to look at telecoms not as a social service to people, but as something that has, that must be taxed almost to extinction. This, I'm taken aback by Engineer Adebayo telling us now that there's another tax coming on equipment, because what does excise tax mean? It means that equipments that are being brought in. Already there must have been some taxes on their equipments. Why this extra 5% again? Government should come to the aid of Nigerians by not squeezing or suffocating the telecom sector. For God's sake, that is the only succor that the citizenry are enjoying for now. When they now want to introduce other forms of taxes, unfortunately, challenges that Engineer Adebayo has mentioned includes cost of diesel, operating costs, and all that. Well, that is expected because you've made profit over the years. You can still at least cushion up some of these costs. But when government is now trying to introduce other costs, I think we should jointly now tell government they shouldn't suffocate the telecom sector.
Do you think that the ALTON members have fully exhausted all options that could forestall this?
They've not done everything they should have done. First, I know that there is a price cap of 50 naira per minute. Since some years back now, 50 naira per minute, you can't go more than that. And I don't know why they now want an increase of the cap, I think they want it to be 50-something naira per minute now. I mean, why do they want that?
50 naira per minute?
Yes, that is the cap as introduced by NCC.
But to clarify that we're still on the per second billing regime.
Well, they can play around, but they can play around below. They can't go above.
Okay.
So I don't know why they want an increase on the cap now.
So that's one. So is that the only other option that you think has not been fully explored?
These other costs, they should also continue to dialogue with government about multiple taxes. They started that about a few years back. I don't know why they are not continuing on that. Beyond that now is this loss of revenue, which is pinching them amidst all this Ukraine crisis and all that he has mentioned. So they are losing revenue, we are losing business. Let us all concertedly agree that government should please extend the SIN registration stuff so that they can make more revenue, and at least revenue loss will be minimal.
My question is for you, Mr. Adebayo. I'm sorry, I apologize ahead of time, but I wonder if telecom operators hold a mirror up to their services. You know, only a few months back, the CEO of one of the operators was apologizing for total network shutdown. Let's look at that. Let's also look at drop calls. Let's also look at SMSs not delivered. You know, let's also look at data services where subscribers don't get value for their money. In the light of that, will this increase, this request for increase, address all of these valid concerns?
Well, thank you, but let me just make a few clarifications on what my colleague, Chief Kubanjo, had said about the floor price. The floor price is some minimum, maximum from which you cannot go. And it stands at 6 naira 40 kobo, not 50 naira, just for clarification. On the tax, the excise tax, we're reading it as a consumption tax, actually, because the communication says it will be on services, voice and data services provided by the operators, and this will be paid through the Nigerian Communications Commission. So we are reading it as actually as some form of consumption tax. And again, by extension, that will also translate to the subscribers. Now, we can talk about why there shouldn't be an increase from now till the end of the day today, but the fundamentals are there. January this year, liter of diesel was sold at 225 naira. All projections were based on that, plus a few percentage. Today, it's at almost 700 naira, if it's available. And you know, our industry is one of the highest consumers of diesel across the country, because a number of cell sites are powered by diesel. Because of the high cost of diesel on one side, the cases of vandalization of sites and stealing of diesel has become something of concern, because almost every day, sites in places are being attacked and they are stealing diesel from those sites. They are also stealing battery for inverters. And unfortunately, some of the inverters that are sold to people's homes, some of those batteries from some sources that may come from stolen batteries from cell sites. All this affects the operating environment and, of course, our cost of doing business. These are information that we continue to inform government about, and we say, given the problems that we face, we also made recommendations on what can be done. And I must say that the issue of price increase, it was not a front burner in our recommendation to the regulator. We had only said we require some regulatory instruments to be activated in order to give some relief, to mitigate against the high cost of business. So we consider the impact on consumers, and in going to our regulator to explain to them the state of affairs of the industry, a price review in terms of end user price was not the first item on the line. We had only said, failing which, we risk that this will translate to increase in consumer prices. Now, on the quality of services, I cannot assure you why we continue to do the best to provide best-in-class services across the country. I cannot assure you that due to environmental factors, which in many cases are beyond the operators, I cannot assure you that you will not have cases of services here and there. It depends on what kind of impact you have. If, for example, a site is vandalized and the generator powers down due to lack of diesel, you will have an experience. If you have vandalization of fiber optic cable, which happens from time to time across the country, you will have some impact on quality of services, and so on and so forth. If you have a landlord who has seized telecom sites, claiming the operators cannot access the site because they want to increase his ground rent on it, and it impacts on quality of services, you can't avoid that from happening. Increase in price will not solve those problems. And that goes to speak to why we are calling on government to please declare telecommunications as critical national infrastructure and ring-fence it from all these external interferences. That will enable us to have seamless services across the country, because once it is declared as critical national infrastructure, it becomes as important as all gas pipeline across the country. Anyone doing anything against those services will be liable to prosecution by the public. So what we face today is where we experience these problems, we have to go ourselves to solve the problem. Many times the people are not even receptive to dialogue. All they want is money. You may have read about 2-3 weeks ago some problem we have with the particular state, where government of that state decided to seize telecom site and arrest workers of telecom companies because of failure to pay taxes that they are asking for, which are not in the statute of the state. So the kind of this kind of behavior of public actors, no doubt, will affect seamless services across the country. And so we are saying to government has a lot to do. You can't task us to provide good quality service and compromise our ability to do so. You cannot say don't review prices and compromise our ability, not our ability to deliver services without having to increase prices. So we are more concerned about the sustainability of the industry. We are not looking at the immediate gains. We are only saying that the sector today has become most critical, that an impact, any negative impact on the telecom sector will affect the entire economy. It's the most available, it's the most affordable services across all nooks and crannies of this country. And we have a duty as a people, and as our government do have a duty to protect these services, to enable us to deliver what we have to do. And in doing so, they must look at the concerns that we're experiencing. They can throw all this out of the window, but the reality will not go away. The problems will not go away if we don't do something. That's why we're calling on government. We must do something, and the time is now.
And you're proposing 40%, just to give subscribers an idea of where they're headed in case the regulator approves this request for tariff increase. 40% on voice, on SMS and data. So where are we moving to? What will subscribers likely be paid?
We are not proposing 40%. We are saying if something is not done, this is the possible implication. That's what we are saying. So we're not proposing 40%. Maybe regulator will come and say otherwise. Maybe regulator will come and say, for you to actually be realistic with the statistics that we have seen, maybe it's less than 40. Maybe it's going to be more than 40. We are only saying that if you don't look at the details of information provided, this is the risk that we stand. That's what we have said. And I wish tomorrow, like government will say, okay, we will introduce some things for the operators, waive this tax, waive this levy, waive these charges, ring-fence networks, ring-fence systems of operators. By this, we continue to have the same rate that we charge. But if something is not done, we stand this big risk. And we all have collective responsibility to ensure that something is done, and it's done now.
Well, just to be clear, Engineer Adebayo, can you give us a figure to telecom operators in the country? Because it would seem like the issues of QoS, as my colleague mentioned, are not universal to all operators. It's like if you are on certain networks, you have good, QoS. If you are on certain other networks, you are not getting the best of times. And maybe in certain parts of the country, certain, operators are not able to service their clients or their subscribers optimally. Can you give us a number to the operators that are members of ALTON?
Well, in ALTON, we are 16. We are 16 members. But there are over 500 licensees of the Nigerian Communications Commission who provide different grades of services. Ours are the Association of Licensed Telecom Operators, which are the main players, the big players. Now, but there are over 500 of others who are licensed to provide different grades of services. And I must say, we operate all networks in one network, because at the end of the day, you could have various players doing what they do. But it's just one national network that we have. And the impact on one major player will affect the ability of the other player to deliver services. I'm not sure there is one single operator today that has the headroom to cope with the failure of another operator. I hope it doesn't happen. In essence, I'm saying that the network is so fragile that if you have one operator going down, it will affect ability of the other operator to provide good quality services across the country, because there is no such significant headroom to be able to accommodate subscribers that will overflow from a failing network to another network. And that's why we take caution in saying that we must protect the industry and not just a particular player. We're talking about the major network operator. We're talking about the infrastructure provider.
Well, in that regard, well, you've talked about it a little bit, but how will that protection come? And you've referenced also, compared the telecom sector to oil and gas. Oil and gas is denominated in dollars, for instance. Telecoms industry is not. So in that comparison, you want to help us understand what are the implications of government classifying telecoms as a critical infrastructure? What are the implications on Nigerians?
Yeah, please don't get it wrong. While our services are offered in local currency, a number of our inputs, other than consumption such as diesel and the rest of them, equipment are not made here. Equipment are imported. Number of things that we use in supporting national network are imported. And so also the demand for forex, as it is in the industry, is significantly high because of systems that are not made here. If we talk about protection of infrastructure, we are saying that classified telecom services as critical security and economic infrastructure. That's what we are saying. We're not saying because of the earnings therefrom. We're only saying that because of the critical nature of this infrastructure, according to the same level of protection as you will accord the oil gas line, which is a major driver of the economy, because while oil brings revenue for government, telecom provides social and economic services for government and for people. So we think that for you to have seamless communication service, to be able to drive and power the economy, you must have that sector as protected, as critical as the economic infrastructure. And that's what we are saying. So we're not talking about the economic ethics. No. We're only saying is about the critical nature of the industry to the entire economy and the security of the country. Because imagine national blackout today, what will happen? Think about how many sectors will be affected if telecom services are affected across the country today, from aviation to commerce to civil to banking to government to travel to security to safety and all of that. So we think that these services is as critical as it is to our economy as the one that supplies the economic lifeline, which is the oil and gas. That's what we believe.
Yeah. In response to your concern about the fragility of infrastructure in the sector, give us a sense of how exposed these infrastructure are, and be specific about how you want government to intervene in protecting these infrastructure.
Now, you can say across the country, while we thank government for rebuilding our road infrastructure, you can see a number of road works going on site. Many times across the country, many times when those road works have been done, the fiber cable across the road have been excavated by government contractors. You can see also if you look critically at ongoing construction site, you will see some cables hanging on banana trees and on plantain trees by the roadside. Those are telecom infrastructure. If we have critical protection, that will not happen. Sometimes government is doing something, we don't even know what they are doing. That's one. Number two, if a state government decides to close the entire telecom site in the state, it's doing it because there are no security implications on him. Because if this be a critical national infrastructure, going to shut that infrastructure will be shutting down the economy, actually. And then you also have cases of individual homeowners just deciding to put padlock on the site to say, you know what, you paid the rent of X last year. Now the rate has increased, though you are in a life contract, but I want more money. He just lock up the site, throw the key away, and say, pay more money, or I don't open the site. If we have this kind of protection where our infrastructure is regarded as critical national infrastructure, those kind of behavior will not happen. And that's what we are talking about. So if we say protect, we're saying ring-fence us against all kinds of external interference that often impact on on having access to that infrastructure that we so require to support the economy.
Well, Chief, you've listened to him, say those things, and I'm wondering, first of all, how do you respond to some of those issues? And before price review can be achieved, we understand that the NCC has to speak to it, compare prices and all of that.
It's a regulator.
Are you listening to him? What are your thoughts?
Quite honestly, I'm surprised that over the years we've been talking about this critical national infrastructure stuff of the telecom sector for as much as 15, 18 years now, making telecoms infrastructure a critical national asset, just like gas pipelines and all that. It's unfortunate that government is turning deaf ears all the time. I mean, over 15 years we've been on this same thing. And is just like power to every home is telecoms now to everybody. Now, it's unfortunate that telecoms affect security. If not, maybe for the subscriber and the operators, we should just say, just like the flight operators have done, from so, we are not going to do anything. That's extreme, but perhaps that will make government understand that they have to come to the aid of the telecom sector to protect it at least. Telecoms has been so unprotected and so open. About a few years back, you have some of these people maintaining their base stations being killed, you know, and if it was, you know, made a critical national infrastructure, all this wouldn't happen. Okay. Perhaps they shouldn't put the telecom sector to the wall by just saying, for instance, in another 1 month, we may have to shut down the entire nation. Then government will now understand why.
I don't think anyone will want that. But let me quickly ask.
So government should come in.
Yeah. Let me ask engineer on this one thing. You talked about 36 taxes that telecom operators have to pay. Which of these taxes do you think, if reduced or removed, could help retain the costs as it is?
There are taxes and levies defined in the statute. We have no objections to those ones. Basically, the company income tax, the payee tax, and all of those that are clearly defined in the statute. The nuisance taxes are actually the most problematic. If a government says they will charge effluent discharge tax on operators, what is effluent discharge? We're not an oil service company. What is environmental sanitation tax on telecom infrastructure? And those nuisance levies and taxes are actually the ones in an attempt to enforce players to pay. That's why they go on being so aggressive on players. So we are not an extractive industry where you say, because you are extracting resources, we must take X and Y from you. No, we are not. We're providing social services, socio-economic services. So we say that the nuisance taxes, quote and unquote, which are taxes that have no relationship to the general taxes defined in the statute, they are the problematic ones, actually. And that's why, if we say critical national infrastructure, those kind of taxes and levies will not be applied against service providers, because it's in an attempt for operators of government in some state and local government to enforce collection of those taxes and revenues. That we have this. You have one particular state saying that they will collect office tax, business premises tax, on sales side that are in the green field, that are in the forest land. So you ask, how does that become an office? Okay. And an attempt to enforce this kind of taxes, why they become so aggressive on operators and they just do anything to disrupt services.
Well, we can just believe and trust that these issues, having been heard and discussed this morning, the authorities know what to do. Engineer Gbenga Adebayo, Chairman, Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria, as well as Chief Adeolu Ogunbanjo, National President, National Association of Telecom Subscribers, NATCOMS. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming on Sunrise Daily.